Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Today's session is a special session. We are not presenting anything to anybody. We are today interacting together as an audience. You ask whatever questions you have regarding your research, your methodology. Then the panelists that I have here, Dr. Mare, Dr. Mnangatire, we should be able to help us understand certain issues as we go forth and all that kind of stuff. So that's the nature of the session today. There is no presentation. It's all about us as scholars and as researchers meeting together and discussing around the work we are doing. So welcome, Dr. Mare. Welcome, Dr. Mnangatire. Welcome, Precious, Pepe, Dani, Setson, Tina, and Kaura. So that's it. So let's start, and we see what we can do, and talk about a few issues. Then we will be able to help each other. So if you have an issue that you need to ask, then you go ahead. So I have seen Tina's hand is up. Tina, you can come through and make the point.
Okay, good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon.
Okay, my question, I think, is related to some of the issues that you have said before, and also in the last presentation, whereby, and I know Prof. Mensah also used to say quite a lot of time when we're doing the coursework, that we need to use recent articles for research. However, you also indicated that we need to go back. If in an article that we are using, we refer to some, we are the author quoted another author, we need to go back to the original author. Now, in most cases, when we go back, or at least when I go back to these authors, then their articles are quite old. And this is becoming a challenge. Then I end up not using it because I don't want to use very old articles for my study. So what should one do in this case?
Okay, thank you, Tina, for that. So the question that I picked here is, I discouraged people to do head behavior where you simply say Mare 2005 cited by Woyo 2020, and you cite them like that. And the issue is, I said people should not do head behavior. You need to go and read the work and see. So the point being raised here is, when one go back to the article and read that article, the article is is quite old. So what should one do? What should one do? That's the question there. Dr. Mare, Dr. Mnangatire, if you want to take it first, let's hear what you say.
Dr. Mnangatire can go first, since today we want to disrupt the way we do things.
Yeah.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
The question is very, very good. And I would say I have experienced the same, that you would want to really get the information from the original article, but when you track back the original article, you find that now it's a very old article. It doesn't fit into the 8 years limit that you would want to cite. So the issue that you need to interrogate is, we do have what we call authoritative authors in a particular field that you are writing about. And also, you need to interrogate yourself, whatever you want to cite, is it something that is a developing story, maybe from a historical perspective, where you would want your readers to know that in the 1900s, things were like this. Then they moved on to this in the 1960s up to where we are today. That kind of citation is not considered as old, because you are giving people a history of where things are coming from or where they originated from. However, if these are just other authors who have said something on the subject, they are not the major players in that particular subject. If their article is old, then you need to look for something that is quite recent, because a lot of things might have changed from what they have said or we knew at that particular time. So you do not need then to get into a habit of bringing in these old articles, which we cannot defend why they are there. Because most of the old articles, when they are cited in a very good article, there is a defensible reason why it is there. You are developing a historical perspective, or these are the guys who originated something, who developed the theory. If you are going to talk about a theory, you need to tell us, where did it start? So you need to cite that very old until you reach to where we are. I remember I was writing about competence in my field. I cited papers as way back as the 1950s coming forward, and that was quite acceptable. Even I remember reviewers were commenting that this is very good, because the author really brought us from where this thing started to where we are today, and to where he thinks this can be taken forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mnangatire, for that presentation and that response. Dr. Murray?
Okay, thanks, Dr. Warren. So I think I want to concur with what Dr. Mnangatire has pointed out. I think there are some scholars that we consider to be classical scholars. So for example, let's say you want to talk about capitalism, for example. I always say that you can't talk about capitalism without going back to Adam Smith or to go back to Karl Marx. And these people wrote centuries and centuries ago. So it's always very important to tell us where exactly this thing it started and where it is actually going. Of course, but if you are, for example, if you're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and then you want to cite scholars that talked about the fourth industrial revolution, 1950, then certainly we'll say you are pretty much lying to us, because we know that this is a recent phenomenon. And the scholars actually at the center of that, that kind of thing, obviously are people like this guy from the World Economic Forum, Klaus, is it Klaus what? What's his the second name? I forget the second name. But essentially, those are the people that are at the center of theorizing the fourth industry. So obviously, in that case, you have to talk about dated sources that are very recent, that can actually speak to the phenomenon that you are talking about. But if you are talking about things that have got a historical significance and also have got historical origins, as Dr. Mnangatire has pointed out, you need to take us back to where it started. You can't cite secondary sources, people that are taking or actually trying to talk about that concept after reading somebody's work. Go and read the actual work so that you can make sense of it for yourself, because there is a tendency even in scholarship where people can actually abuse certain quotations from other people so that they just advance their own research agenda. That's what I would say for now.
Thank you, everyone for saying that. So I think, Tina, to just help you, like for instance here, people like Danny 1981 that I cited in this article, these are the pioneers, or these are the thinkers around issues around customer satisfaction. So the message that is coming out here is, if the work that you are tracing back to those ages, to those years, is seminal work. It deserves to be cited in your recent work. So seminal works like Mark Grigor's work, Maslow's work, Adam Smith's work, Michael Porter's work, and all those other theories and all other gurus in your work, they need to be cited in your work. What then becomes different is to go and take Danny 1981, who is not a seminal scholar, who is just writing the general discussion around the concept, and cite them in 2020. That's where we have the problem. And one of the reasons why, if you have read this paper that I wrote, and I have cited Danny, I have cited Pincus, I have cited Kozak, these are the old sources appearing in that paragraph. It's important to go and read them and understand what was the issue that they were mentioning, and how, because what I captured myself as a writer is what I have interpreted. So my interpretation might not be the same interpretation you need at the moment. So it's always advisable to get back to the original. And it's always advisable not to cite the old sources unless these people are seminal scholars, unless these people have developed theories. Like if you look at the Artisan theory, the theory of reasoned action, the theory of planned behavior, there is really no way we're gonna cite someone of 2020 because they're not the originators. So it becomes important in that space. We hope we have helped you in that regard, unless if there is a follow-up of the issues that you are dealing with.
No. Thank you, Doc. No, it's clear. I think it helped a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Then the next question is, it's in the chat. How can I determine if there is really research, if there is a real research problem worth researching, or the problem has already been answered and I just need to see if the result will be different in a different environment that is within the context of Namibia, different from a European perspective. So I'm getting two things here. The person is asking, how can one determine if there is a real problem which is worth researching? I start with you, Dr. Mari. How can one determine whether there is a real research problem that is worth researching?
Okay, so I think there are many ways of going about it. I think we talked about it. We said that, of course, you can do a thorough literature review to see where the gaps are in terms of your particular field. That could be one way of actually looking at it. But the other issue is pretty much looking at a practical problem. If there's a practical problem, like for example, like right now, we all know that COVID-19 is a practical health problem that we are dealing with right now. So obviously, you don't need literature around that to do a thorough literature review to understand that there is a problem, or where there is poverty, and you want to understand what drives that kind of poverty or unemployment. I don't think certainly, of course, probably you could probably need some kind of literature just to back up to say, okay, maybe the number of people that are now employed is actually grown over the last couple of months because of maybe COVID-induced economic hardships in Namibia. That certainly can. But certainly, if you can do a thorough literature review and also identify what we'll probably call a practical problem, certainly you can be able to find a research problem worth looking at. And also the other issue really is to say that, yes, there are studies that are actually done where you don't really need to reinvent the wheel, essentially. Where you are just saying, okay, there is a study that has been done on customer satisfaction in Turkey, or it has been done in Australia, it has been done in the US, but that kind of a study hasn't been done in the Namibian context. And then that could be a gap that you have found for yourself. And you can use that to motivate why you want to do that particular research. And I think it's still a worthwhile pursuit to actually do, as long as you demonstrate and justify why that particular issue deserves to be understood in your context. That's what I would say for now. I don't know, Dr. Manangatire can come in.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'll just want to add on, like starting from the last point. If you are doing a study that it has been done somewhere else and they found certain results, you need to prove that you have reasons to believe that the situation is different. The unique findings in the context of, let's say, in Europe would be different to customer satisfaction survey in the context of Africa or Namibia. So you need to find reasons for that. For example, I would say, for example, you would bring in things like consumer awareness levels. You would imagine maybe consumer awareness levels are higher in Europe as compared to Africa. That's just an assumption. If you have literature to back that their levels of awareness are different, that's one reason you can actually say, because of this reason, the satisfaction, customer satisfaction can actually vary in Europe as compared to the Namibian context. So it's not good enough to just say, because this was not done in the Namibian context. What evidence do you have to make us believe that these results could be different? You can also talk of maybe age profiles, economic levels, or economic outcome, economic factors, to say, because of these economic factors, the outcome could be what? Could be different. Then when you justify that, it's still okay, you can do that. There is, because we cannot guarantee that the results will still be what? Be the same. Then another thing is that you need to do, in terms of doing your literature search, I think you need to look at what other people have found on the subject. Then you need to look at what they have indicated as their limitations and what they have indicated as their recommendations. At a very high level, especially when you're doing PhD, you should then be able to pick up the weaknesses in any study that was done by people without even reading what they consider to be the limitations. So if you find these things, that people were approaching a certain problem from a certain angle, for example, they approached it from a qualitative perspective, they approached it from a quantitative perspective, then you want to say, if we approach this from a mixed method perspective, we are likely to build in something that is completely different, and you justify that, you have a problem that can be defended. I think that's what I can say for now.
Thank you for that. I think these are very useful comments that are being made. So there are usually quite a number of issues that people need to ask themselves when they are determining around the problem. Some of the issues that you need to ask is, well, what is the case? What are the key factors? What are the causes? What is this? Is it a real life problem? Is it a practical problem? Does it require you to collect data and all those kind of stuff? So it's important we get this. And I think simply saying that the study was done in Europe and then you need another one in Namibia, that's really not good enough for any study, especially at the graduate level. People need to really provide key issues. So some of the questions that you can ask could be actually exploratory questions, descriptive questions, causal issues, evaluative questions, predictive questions, historical questions. All this kind of stuff must lead you to a problem and all those kind of issues. I hope, Danny, we have helped you hear and see. So if there is a lot of literature around, it's quite important that people don't just reinvent the wheel and just try to go narrowly to say, oh, okay, because it should have been done that way, or it could have been researched in Europe. But if one is able to argue the weaknesses of the studies that were done in Europe and perhaps show reason why they cannot be applied in Namibia, then it means you are good to go, or perhaps why they cannot be applied in your country. Then you are good to go. So the problem has to be real, and it must be worth researching, and it must be something that needs to be answered for us to progress. Then Precious is asking, what tips can you share for students to take into consideration to ensure that objectives, problem, literature, theoretical framework, and methodology are talking to each other? What tips can you share for students to ensure that the objectives of the study, the problem statement, the literature, the theoretical framework, and the methodology are talking to each other? I don't know who wants to come in first today. She's asking about the golden thread around issues of objectives, problem statement, literature, theoretical framework, and methodology. How do we ensure the thread is there? Anyone to come through?
Okay. I think this one is very big. So I would like to start from the surface, then the gurus can go deeper. Right. If you have your title, for example, I have the title to say, what can I say? I have an example of a title to say the effectiveness of face mask in reducing the transmission of COVID-19 in the context of in the Namibian context. So if I want the first alignment to do, if this is my title, then if I want to write my objective, then I will just take that title and add the word to assess the effectiveness. Then everything else remains the same. Then I take that very same title, I change it to a question. What is the effectiveness or level of effectiveness of face mask? That's just at a very, very surface and at a very, very general starting point in terms of alignment. Now, if I'm to look at the problem statement, your title already is suggesting that we do not know the effectiveness of the face mask. So the problem in the problem statement, you need to hammer it that as much as we have ran to put on face mask and make it mandatory for everyone to put on a face mask, it has actually not yet been established how the face mask, or to what extent is it actually effective in reducing the transmission of COVID-19. So if this is one of the key statements that will be in your problem statement, you have started the alignment. I will hand over to Dr. Mari to expand from there.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mnangatire. So I think, as you have pointed out, the issue of finding out, actually demonstrating what a golden thread is not a mean thing. It's not easy at all. I think that's where actually we can actually see whether you are ready to do postgraduate studies or not. If you are able to do that, then certainly you have passed the exam. So essentially what I would say is that it's always very important to read widely before you plunge into this thing. So as long as your objectives are informed by a researchable problem, it becomes easy for you then to be able to build the literature around that, so that once you build that literature, it will be able to guide you in terms of what are the possible theories that align with whatever you are going to be dealing with. Unless you have done a proper reading, I'll tell you, it will become very difficult to get a proper theory and even proper conceptual theories that can actually help you to look at some of these issues. And I've seen that students often struggle because they think that there is one theory out there waiting for them to just put into your study, and then all of a sudden your study is already making sense. No, 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 no. You need to read as much as possible so that you can be able to understand how this particular theory fits in and speaks to what I'm trying to research. Because remember, the theoretical concept, or the conceptual framework comes in so that it gives you that anchor that we're talking about, or that framework, if we are to use that term, the framework, it gives you the parameters upon which you can make the analysis, or to either support a certain hypothesis, or to support certain assumptions, or even to disapprove certain assumptions that are already in existence. So it's always very important that you read widely and understand your field first and foremost. And then from there, as you are reading literature, you're going to see certain theories that constantly come and constantly come into the picture, where people actually use these particular theories or conceptual frameworks to actually understand their own studies. That is when you can then say, oh, this particular theory or conceptual framework can actually help me to do A, B, C, D in my study. Otherwise, if you don't do that, chances are that it's going to become very difficult. So I would say that in a nutshell, that first and foremost, make sure that your research objectives are based on a researchable and a researchable problem, but also pretty much even a practical problem if you want to take it that way. And then we are also saying that make sure that you read as much as possible so that you can be able to understand what are the other theories and conceptual frameworks that have been developed around that particular area that you are trying to work with, so that you can be able to understand. And also remember that, especially in qualitative studies, theories are elastic. They can always be, you can move them around. It's not like they are cast in stone. It's not like when you have a theory, it's only meant for a particular study and not your study. It's also about picking and choosing what you can use in your study so that you can advance our knowledge. So that's why we are saying it's knowledge creation, because it's your ability to push or to actually make sure that you use some of the concepts that are within these theories to advance our new knowledge and even new insights in terms of what is really obtaining on the ground. I will leave it to Dr. Woyo for now.
Thank you for that. So I think the issue of golden thread is quite important. And it reminds me, when we were doing the PhD, someone at some point was told by a supervisor that instead of you providing me with some ramblings, I really want to understand what your golden thread is. And at that point, someone wanted to quit because the person didn't understand what a golden thread is all about. So it's quite important for people to understand what a golden thread is. Where do you get one? How do you work out it together in your PhD, in your masters, and all that? So to begin with, the golden thread, maybe for a want of a better explanation, we are talking about your central argument that pulls your whole thesis together, that creates coherence across the objectives, like what Precious is asking, across the literature review, the research questions, the theoretical and the conceptual framework, as well as the methodology. And it has to go beyond the methodology, because it also has to speak to the analysis, the organization of the data, the conclusions that you are able to draw. So it's on the basis of the argument you are supposed to make. So you would say one thing, that this sounds so easy, sounds so straightforward, perhaps when I put it like this. But in my experience, and I think in the experience of many supervisors, it is quite really difficult to get this point together. And another way about it would be keeping, so when you are writing, if you are writing your PhD, your master's, this is how you're gonna keep things through. What you're gonna need to do is to keep remind yourself about what is the point of your PhD. So your point, Precious, is about gentrification. That should remain central to whatever you are writing. So you need to keep reminding yourself, what is the point of the PhD? What is it actually about? And what are you trying to say? So one of my friends once said that if you continuously ask yourself about this, you're gonna make it good. So how do you get one? How do you get a golden thread? Certainly, you cannot go to Amazon and buy it. You cannot go online and buy it. So what needs to happen is you have to make it. You have to build it. And coming up with a golden thread, making these things coherent and speak it together, it takes time. It is really challenging, and quite of many things that you need to do. So like your theoretical frameworks, analytical framework, literature review, the argument should be built by part by part, and always in relation to the main question. So what Dr. Mnangagwa was trying to do is everything else revolves around what is the point of this PhD? What is the main question that this PhD is going to answer? So there are key parts of your thesis that need to be put in place as you go in order to create a strong argument, a strong thesis, some coherent arguments and some coherent sub-arguments that should eventually build towards the overall central argument of the PhD you are writing, the masters you are writing. So in other words, you need to be on top of the range in terms of you scoping the field very well, knowing the gap that your research is going to fill, because this is going to help you start asking some refined questions, which can turn into your objectives or your research questions. And you need to move from you need to move from this reading into tougher theoretical issues, tougher theoretical and conceptual issues, and you need to find, Dr. Mare was talking about your theory, or you're gonna call it your theorology, and all those kind of stuff. Because this is going to help you, once you have the theory, it's going to help you refine issues, refine the focus of your study, and you need to consider issues around, when I look at this question, what kind of data do I need? How am I going to find this data? What will I do in order to make sense out of the data? At some point in my PhD, I was just having a discussion with my supervisor, and I was telling her, a lot of the data that I have doesn't make sense. The response she gave me is, you need to make sense out of that madness. So it's part of you creating the golden thread. So you need to make sense out of the madness, make sense out of the data, select what is relevant to analyze in relation to your research questions. Because I think that was my problem at that point. I wanted to analyze everything. You can't analyze everything. You need to analyze what's relevant to your research issues. So what's relevant, and even your reading should be built around that. Then you might also need to further consider the research questions you are trying to answer and see how do they connect with the theory and the theory you have, and see how does it connect with the data. Because if you miss that puzzle, then you might collect wrong data, which is difficult to analyze, and you will not be able to tell the story that answer the question, and all those kind of stuff. So following a logical and coherent process, pulling each part of the process through with you into a subsequent stage or a part of the process is going to be really helpful. So in other words, don't leave all the theory and the research questions behind when you plan out your methodology. So and this is one of the reasons why it becomes messy at conclusion level. It's because people would have written about their theory in the literature chapter, forget about it, think about the methodology, and there's quite a disconnection. So my advice is, don't leave the objectives, the literature, everything behind when you plan out your methodology, when you plan out how to get your data. And don't forget the scoping of the field you have done, the research questions you are asking, and the theoretical framework, the conceptual your framework you have developed when you organize and begin to analyze the data, if you are to build a strong and quite shine argument. So the argument in the end is the thing with the PhD. So you cannot have your readers get to the end of it wondering, so what? And why did I waste my time reading all that? I was grading a master's thesis at some point, and I was asking, I actually spent 2 weeks reading nothing here, and does it matter? That's the point. I hope it is going to be helpful. Let me take one question from YouTube and present it here. So I have an online participant here who is asking, please do enlighten me on how I can access reputable sources for my literature review. You've seen that I have been to a university member. I have seen that I have to be a university member or to pay to access certain sources. Anyone to help there? So the person watching online is saying, how do I access reputable journals? And most of the times, Chichi is trying. She is either asked to pay or she needs to be part of the university in order to access the materials. Anyone to come through with the answer for that?
Let me try and assist there. I think there are so many ways of doing it. I think one thing that I've realized that most students think that platforms like Google Scholar are only for scholars. Platforms like Google Scholar are not only for scholars. Even a student can also join in there, and then you make sure that you activate your list so that if certain people in your field publish something, then you get that notification to say that so and so is published. And I think I've seen that it helps. You can actually even streamline to say, I want this kind of literature. So and what Google Scholar will do is that almost after every 7 days or 5 days, it will actually then collate all the information and tells you so and so, or this kind of information was published recently in relation to what you are looking for. So you can easily then follow up with the people that are on Google Scholar and write to them or even inbox them, whatever you can do. You can also use other platforms like ResearchGate. There are so many scholars there. You can also tell them that, I have seen that you have published in this particular area, and I know that you are good at publishing in this particular thing. So I would want you to send me the soft copies of your publication. They can do that. So that way you can actually run away from actually, bouncing yourself on these paywalls. Because one thing that we have seen, and we recently were talking about that argument with so many people, that most African scholars are publishing in peer-reviewed journals, but peer-reviewed journals where Africans are actually then supposed to pay, in order to read that information. So at the end of the day, Africans cannot read what Africans are publishing. And most of our things actually are actually read by people that can actually afford, who are in Europe or in Asia. And the people that are back home are not able to consume our content. And I think that is one thing that we're talking about, to say, I think we need to find a new way of actually publishing so that we allow even, our own students to access our own content. Because even I myself, sometimes I cannot even buy my own chapters. They will be probably priced at like $20, $20 per chapter or something like that. So I think for here, I think what I would say is that try and use those platforms where you can actually have easy access to, and also face-to-face or even virtual meetings with the people that have actually published. So I've talked about Google Scholar, I've talked about academic.edge. It's also another platform where you can join and ask personally those who are publishing in your area, so that they can send you physical or whatever soft copies. I think that way you can also be helped. But the other way also of doing is to say, you go on Google. When you go on Google, you want something, instead of saying you just want, let's say, effectiveness of community, or maybe the impact of customer satisfaction. So when you write customer satisfaction on Google, don't just write customer, because once you do that, it will give you a lot of information, some of which is news, some of which is video, some of which, so streamline and say probably you just need PDF documents of that kind of thing. Once you put the PDF at the end of that, your Google search, it will streamline and give you all the published articles that usually when we are looking for PDF, usually it's reports or it's actually journal articles that you are getting, or even book chapters sometimes if you are lucky. So you can actually get those kinds of things for free if you streamline your search on Google too. That's what I would say for now.
Thank you, Dr. Mare. Dr. Mnangatire, any suggestions? I think Dr. Mnangatire is muted. So I think those are some of the suggestions. And I always say, if you, because normally when we put our publications out there, we also put our email addresses and all those kind of stuff. So if you are struggling to get the article, the easiest way is to really write the author. If the author is still alive, they will always be glad to share their study or their article with you. Then another way to do it is when you go on to big publishers like Emerald, Elsevier, Francis and Taylor, and all those kind of stuff. If you write and if you search your papers and you indicate, I know in the case of Emerald, if you indicate open access, if you write whatever you write and then you indicate that you have got, I think I can actually do it here and see. Okay. So you can actually go online and select. There are some papers that have already been published, open access. Of course, there are not many, but you're gonna get some of the issues that you might need in that particular paper. Like for instance, if I write customer satisfaction in an Emerald search. If I write customer satisfaction, so let me share my screen. So if I write, if I am in an Emerald space, I can actually write customer satisfaction like what I did there. So at some point, you're gonna choose an option where you're gonna click only content that I have access to and only open access. So if I click open access, then it means all the papers that are coming out here, like all these ones, I can actually get access to them. And if you cannot pay for them, this is one way of getting the issue. So the role of customer personality and satisfaction, attitude to brand and loyalty in mobile services, actually published in July 2020, is accessible to you. So you can do this with all the majority of the publishers around there with good literature. You're gonna get some access. So in this regard, you actually see I have got so many access to this on this topic, which are relatively very recent that I can review. So we hope Chichi, who is watching on Facebook, you are helped with this response. Then another issue coming out here is let me see, where am I? Kolka is asking that what is the difference between theoretical framework and theoretical framework and conceptual framework, and what is meant by empirical studies? We once covered this, so we are just going to ask N1 here. I think Dr. Mare has sneaked out. Maybe Dr. Mnangatire, you can come through and articulate the difference between a theoretical framework and a conceptual framework, and perhaps indicate what are empirical studies.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Woyo. I'll again introduce the differences. When you are looking at a theoretical framework, you are looking at, as it says, framework. Framework basically means that it's a frame. If you have observed in construction, we have construction whereby we put metal. We start with metal bars. If we want, for example, to build a structure, then we put metal bars to demarcate that this is how the structure will be, like maybe in the corners and in the sides, so that it gives a framework to that building. Then when we are actually now putting, maybe if it's bricks, we put the bricks in between these particular metals. That's kind of a framework. So if it's a framework in your research, it basically means that it is central to the problem that you want to study. And if it's a theoretical framework, which means it's based on an existing theory, let's say the theory of motivation by Maslow, for example, if you are going to do a particular study in which maybe you want to measure actually self-actualization in people, maybe let's say in academia or people in a particular profession, how do they actually, what is self-actualization to them? Then you can now bring in Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs as your theoretical framework. If you bring it as your theoretical framework now, what it basically means is that your problem is centered around this theory. This theory is talking about self-actualization and meeting the needs. So in your study, what you are also going to look at are the needs of academics. What is it that they need? And at what point do they say they've reached what? Self-actualization. If you are going to collect the data or the methods that you are going to apply, they need also to speak to the theory. In some cases, you would find that actually your data collection too is developed based on the theory, your theoretical framework. What did Maslow say in terms of physiological needs? And then what would be physiological needs for an academic? Then you develop your questionnaire from there. So the framework itself, whether it's theoretical or conceptual, it forms the basis. It becomes like the stem of your study. Then if it's a conceptual framework, it serves the same purpose as a theoretical framework. But the difference is in a conceptual framework, as the word says, conceptual, it's something that you conceive yourself to try and start thinking that I want to do a study on self-actualization among academics. Then you start to think, what are the variables that I need to think of in terms of studying this problem? What is actualization? And this actualization, could it be related to needs of the academics and the academics themselves that are there? And what other things can actually determine self-actualization in academics? Maybe you can say qualifications, publications, maybe community engagement. So all these are particular variables. Then you sit down, you try to put them in a conceptual diagram to say, how are they related? If I have a scholar there, how is the scholar related to publication? How is the publication then related to self-actualization? So you then draft this on your own, but based on relationships that you are trying to establish when you want to do your study. So it becomes a conceptual framework in the sense that it's not an existing theory, but it's something that you have developed based on literature, and you can also develop it based on other theories, but it's not only solely based on one theory, but it's something that you might borrow from a theory, but then it's something completely different, and you now use it to guide your study. That if I'm going to explain my study from what is the problem and and the results, you can actually track that. You see this academic here. I think if these things come in, publication come in, academic qualifications come in, community engagement come in, maybe promotion comes in, then if these things are met, then we can actually have this academic moving from a point of just having the basic needs of being an academic to reach to a point where they say, I have actualized, I'm now at the top of the academic ladder. I think that's what I can say on the difference between conceptual and theoretical framework. On empirical and what is the difference? What is empirical research, right? Was the question.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so empirical research, I think we do have two types, empirical research and conceptual research. So you would find that empirical research is the research whereby we are actually going out to collect data and measure things. So whatever we get as the results is backed by evidence. It's something that we can measure. If we, giving like the example I gave before to say masks are effective, let's say in reducing the transmission of COVID, we need to show data that actually, yes, someone without a mask, we have realized that so much transmission can occur. But when you put a mask, the transmission is reduced to this much. And we have that evidence that we can provide. That's an example of an empirical research where we actually go out and collect evidence and collect data. Then that would support our outcome. But in conceptual research, I can sit like I'm sitting now, and then I started to think around things. Why would a mask work in preventing COVID-19 transmission? Yeah, it could work because a mask would cover the openings that actually are the portals of entry for COVID, and they are also the portals of exit for COVID. So that would work. But there is a cover, and then I would think, but what is the size of a COVID virus? How big is it? Okay, maybe it's this big, but it doesn't move alone. It moves in droplets, and these droplets are actually bigger than the virus itself. So if we put a mask, as much as the virus itself can pass through the holes in a mask, but the virus does not move alone, it moves in droplets. So yes, most of them, the droplets cannot pass through the mask. So yes, a mask can work. Yes, the virus, some of the virus can eventually escape, but by the time they escape from their droplet and escape through to go out of the mask, they are not moving at a faster speed. They might just be sticking to the same mask that one is wearing. So if there's no contact of one person to the other or no touching of a mask, yeah, so a face mask can actually reduce COVID transmission. Then I can write that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Precious, at some point your hand was up. Are you still intending to ask or to make a point?
No, I most of the things have been mentioned by Dr. Mare. I think most students would have a challenge. Like for instance, the university I am in has become like too political to the extent that they don't even subscribe to some of the journals. So you have students facing problems where you can't access. So I think Dr. Mare mentioned ResearchGate, academia. Academia is very good. If I search about someone, for instance, I got some documents from some papers from Dr. Woyo from academia, and you can then follow the person so you can see every time they post something, it comes out. You can also ask your library. Like I'm saying, my university has become very political lately. So they've forgotten that their core is about the student and providing certain services to the students. So what I do myself is I go to the library, where I ask the librarian, the one who's in charge of the e-staff, to ask from other universities if they can get me these documents because I cannot afford them. So they will circulate around universities in Zambia or any other librarians around the region to say, do you have this document? And then it can be sent to you. You can also register. For instance, if you register with JSTOR, even though you don't have the university access, you are able to save documents and read. You cannot download them, but you can read them within the journal. So those are some of the ways I think students can. It's really frustrating not being unable to get some of these, especially some of these seminar papers, etc., which you would want to really build your historical background or build your theoretical framework. So I find that most of these academia and also following on ResearchGate, asking for a document. If I can't download it, I ask from the author. So I've managed to get a lot of papers that way.
Thank you, Precious, for that. Koka, your hand is up. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this name correctly even.
Yes, doctor, you are pronouncing it exactly the way it's supposed to be. I should
Okay.
start off by thanking Dr. Mnangatire. That's really, the explanation is really good. And I'm now clear after so many years of trying to figure out what is this conceptual and theoretical. Where do I draw a line? And empirical. It's very clear how he explained it. The other thing that I want us, that I need favor from the three guru, I've sent Dr. Uyo a screenshot of a sample of a statement of a problem. If you can just access that and then you share your screen, and then the gurus can come in there and maybe comment as to what are the missing part in that, or is it on par? Thank you.
Oh, okay. I'll check that. Then I think in the chat room, people are asking. Someone is asking, would you give an example of a non-researchable topic and what makes it unresearchable? There you go, panelists. Would you give an example of a non-researchable topic and what makes it non-researchable? Let me open what she's talking about.
Okay, Dr. Mare, I'll go first. It would be nice to actually maybe sometimes know in which field is one researching, so that you give something that is quite relevant. But I will try. For example, one student would want to.
Business. She's a business student.
Oh, she's a business student.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, if she's a business student, for example, maybe what would be a non-researchable problem would be to say, what is your problem? Maybe your question would be, what is the price of bread in Namibia? So that is a research problem. That would be would call it a non-researchable problem. Why? Because anyone can just sit here and maybe go into ShopRite and see what is the price of what? Of bread. Or I can just call here into a shop, how much is bread costing? I don't need to do a research for that. That's not a researchable problem. But if I want to turn it into a researchable problem, maybe I can actually now say, what are the variations in the prices of the bread in the different maybe markets of Namibia? So I would want to compare maybe Windhoek and maybe Zambezi or other places, maybe rural and urban. What are the variations in the prices of what? Of bread? You would find that maybe you need to do something to actually be able to get that. But that is at a very basic level. But I would say basically is, once you say this is a problem, one needs to ask, can we not get the answer by just looking around? Can someone not respond to you and you get that particular answer? Or I can give another example of a researchable problem to say, what do people think about what are the perceptions of people on the prices of bread in Namibia? Can I can speak for myself to say, okay, maybe it's expensive, but do I then represent a significant number of people to say that it's expensive? Maybe I do not. So maybe what can I do? Maybe I need to ask more people, and I need to do it in a scientific manner. Then that becomes a researchable problem. I think I can hand over to Dr. Marele.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mnangatire. I think you have captured what I wanted to say, but essentially, what is at the core of a researchable question or researchable problem is something that can actually, obviously we need to make sure that it is smart, it's something that's measurable, specific, achievable, and something that you can go out there and actually, find out something, for example, as you are pointing out, for example, if you say, what is the price of the bread of, it's something that you can just go and observe. And in the next 2 minutes or so, you already know the answer. So obviously that is something that is not even worth researching about. when we are saying it should be researchable, we are not saying that it should be out of this world. It should be, something that has never been done. We know that some of these things have been done, but we are saying there should be some kind of, knowledge creation or knowledge generation that is intended as a result of actually going about doing that particular thing. So for example, as he was pointing out right now, you can go and ask people, for example, right now, so let's do a research on what are the perceptions of Namibians on the lifting of the lockdown regulations by the president yesterday, for example. That could be, it's a very interesting issue right now, because some are really hesitant. Some are saying it was too premature. They should have waited. Some are saying, no, it's fine. Let's just live with it. That kind of. So obviously that is a researchable problem, because you're going to find very different kinds of views from people. So that is pretty much what you must always be thinking about, to say, how am I going to answer to societal problems, or actually lead to what would probably say knowledge generation. So your research, a researchable problem is always something that leads to knowledge creation, or it actually solves our societal problems that we're actually dealing with. For example, like COVID-19 that Dr. Mnangagwa was talking about, the use of masks, for example, you can do a research, how do people actually dispose of their masks? Because right now the other issue that people really talk about is that, yes, we are using masks, but how are we keeping them? How are we making sure that they are safe? And also they are also not safe only to us, but also to those also who come in contact with them. So these are some of the issues that you can actually do, which are researchable, and actually it can actually lead to a situation where society can actually benefit out of that particular project. And then I think I've realized that I think the participant actually said that they are doing a research on, is it corporate social responsibility at public universities in Namibia? Yeah, of course, I've pointed out that there's somebody who has done, but of course, I'm not saying that you cannot do your study, but I think you can actually you can actually read it. I think if you come to NAS library, they can actually give you access so that you can see what they looked at, or probably if you know the person, you can reach out to that particular person. Shoki Kanjim, I think, is the one who did that particular study, to see what exactly they did in terms of coming up with their research problem, or actually demonstrating why there is need for corporate social responsibility, corporate social investments by public universities. Because most of the time we think that public universities are just there, and therefore they don't engage in these corporate social responsibility programs, yet they actually do that quite a lot. So I think it would be very interesting if it's a comparative way, maybe if you are pitching it at a comparative level where you are probably targeting NAST, you are targeting UNAM, you're also targeting IUM or other universities that are also in there. I think that would certainly help you.
Thank you, Dr. Maride. Evelyn, I don't know, I responded to you. In case you are near your computer, if you have that particular diagram that I asked midweek, you can get ready to share it after we have talked about this one that I've projected. So this one is Koka. I think she's researching on flexible working arrangements. And then this is what she thinks is the problem statement. Now she's asking me to check the topic. That will become too much. What is the topic? Just to say it.
All right, let me just say the topic.
Yeah.
The topic is investigating the impact of flexible working arrangements on organizational performance, a case study of NTA.
So you are investigating flexible working arrangements on organizational performance.
Mm-hmm.
And how is the performance? What are the proxies of performance? What measures performance?
I actually have two variables here.
No, you don't have. I want that variable. The dependent variable is performance, right?
Yes.
Yes, I want to know which kind of performance are we looking at? All kinds of performance?
No, employee performance.
Then, yeah, you see, this is what Precious was talking about. That I don't really have to find it very late in the results section that you were talking about employee performance, why don't you put employee performance there and then quickly operationalize the construct so that the reader is able to be with you immediately?
Okay, did I just, sorry, doctor, it's actually organizational performance, like the overall performance of the organization.
How do I measure that?
Don't know, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and that's also why I'm asking that, can we be specific, or at least can you operationalize the construct? Okay, that's about, because for me, if constructs are not clearly operationalized at thesis level, then it becomes quite difficult. And here you are saying NTA, including several organizations in Namibia, are reluctant to implement flexible working arrangements. This is a claim which is not cited, and I have a problem with that. COVID-19 pandemic now requires organizations to come up with flexible working arrangements. I doubt this, because this is not the first pandemic we have met, and it's not like flexible working arrangements were not there before the pandemic. I don't know other panelists, but for me, flexible working arrangements have always been there way before this disaster.
Yeah, so I think she needs to make sure that some of these key terms are clearly defined, maybe up there, or even as soon as they are introduced in this thesis. And also, as you are pointing out, issues around flexible working arrangements have always been there. What COVID-19 has only done is to accelerate some of these things. And now, obviously, because of issues around lockdowns, social distancing, and all these other measures, obviously companies have to find ways to continue operating even virtually, that is. So that's why probably we are seeing more and more companies are embracing flexible working arrangements grudgingly, that is, in some cases, but also because of it's a matter of a survival at the end of the day.
Yeah, so after reading this, I can still ask you, Koka, that, so what do you intend to answer? Yes, what do you intend to answer? Because you are saying to me, as a result of the above discussed situation, employees feel demotivated, but I don't seem to get the theoretical discussion that shows that it's these FWAs that are leading to demotivation, or that there is increased absenteeism, reduced morale, reduced job satisfaction, and all those kind of stuff. This is cited in 2010 before the pandemic. What's the relationship does this literature have with flexible working arrangements that have been induced by COVID-19? So what?
Okay, Dr. Oyo, can I come in?
Yes.
Right. Having heard what a topic is and the other pertinent questions that you posed to her, I think it's something she needs to ponder around, to say what exactly are the constructs of the organizational performance that she's actually going to measure. Then if you look at now this problem statement, she's asking whether this is adequate or not. The problem here is not coming out, because your title is worried about organizational performance. And then what situation, you described a bit of the situation currently that is there. Like you are saying the organization is not implementing flexible working hours. And then the implementation of flexible working hours itself, has it been found? That would be my first question. Has it been found to actually improve organizational performance? That's number one. Number two, then they are denied these flexible working hours. Then you indicated that this has made them become demotivated, right? This has resulted in them becoming demotivated, and maybe you are saying there's increased absenteeism. But this increased absenteeism and reduced morale you are talking about, you are citing something that happened somewhere else. That does not tell us that workers at NTA are actually demotivated. What is the evidence? Because you need to tell us what is happening now at NTA. They have refused to implement flexible working hours. So what is happening? You need to give more meat on the situation on the ground. Then when you have given us more meat on the situation on the ground, then you lead us to say, this situation actually has been found to affect organizational productivity. Then you need to support that actually, if we deny employees flexible working hours, then this can happen, and I've observed this happening, and this, because of this, maybe organizational performance at NTA is likely to be to be affected. Then maybe it leads us to say, why exactly do you want to measure this organizational performance? And what was the organizational performance before issues of the pandemic and flexible working hours? Was NTA working at its maximum best? Why do you want to measure it now? Do you feel that the denying of flexible working hours has impacted on the organizational productivity? Because I would also think that maybe flexible working hours, as much as it was there, has been fast-tracked by the pandemic. And its fast-tracking actually has caught many organizations unprepared. And this could have actually impacted on their on their productivity. So it's understandable that some organizations are actually resisting it because they are afraid it's going to affect on their it's going to impact on their productivity because they are not actually prepared for it. So you need to really think seriously about what this flexible working hours, denying of it, is actually a good thing for productivity or it's a bad thing for productivity. And you need to justify that and take into consideration the question I asked, that I think that flexible working hours actually disrupted what was normal and what was working for many organizations. And many organizations were not prepared for flexible working hours. So implementing flexible working hours could actually hamper or reduce organizational productivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mnangatirede. So I think there are so many issues there, if in other companies that have got those flexible working conditions, what does the literature say also in terms of flexible working conditions and performance? And this is the point where I had really wanted to know, when we look at performance, what are we looking at? And when we come to NTA, does this performance apply? Can we measure it? Because those are my fears that I don't know what NTA does. How do we quantify the performance? How do we look at all those kind of issues? But operationalizing constructs would help everybody else know that, oh, okay, this is what happens. So it's also important for you to indicate in your literature or in your discussion to show what does literature say in terms of the relationship between what is it called, flexible working arrangements and performance. Does it seem to work? And when it does seem to work, then we need now to investigate and find out the results regarding that. Evelyn, do you have your computer with you? Or do you have your framework with you? These guys are qualitative researchers, so they might defend you against me, like I asked you in your presentation.
Yeah. Okay. Can I just share that that particular slide?
Yes, please just share it. Oh, okay. So Evelyn was presenting in a symposium hosted by the University of Stellenbosch and UNAM. And she presented this as a framework, conceptual framework. So my issue with her was, if I look at these issues, this kind of give me some quantitative relationship between variables. So I was asking her that, okay, how are you going to determine the significance of these parts in a qualitative study? So Dr. Murray is a qualitative researcher, Dr. Mnangatire is a qualitative researcher, because for me, I was seeing that this is the routes that we need to take, and I was even formulating hypotheses when I was listening to a presentation. So I asked her about that, and people felt like it can still work in a qualitative study, but I was not very convinced. Dr. Mari, Dr. Mnangatire, so maybe you can actually tell other panelists in brief what your topic is all about, and then we can think about discussing this framework.
Okay. Can you hear me? Because it looks like my
we can
network
hear you.
is a little bit poor.
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
The topic itself, it's dissecting the impact of accessing personal loans from microfinance lenders on employees' financial well-being in the mobile telecommunications industry. And in terms of impact being used in qualitative study, I know Dr. Warrior also said I can't use impact cannot be measured in qualitative study. But there's something that I read that mentioned that impact in qualitative study is used to assess and understand rather than measurements.
Yeah, assessing, I agree, but measuring impact, I disagree, yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the variables, when looking at financial well-being itself, the studies some studies say that it is contributed to by demographic factors and the person's level of financial literacy, their financial behavior, and their financial stress levels all lead to a person's financial well-being.
Okay, maybe before we proceed, these constructs you have here, financial literacy, financial behavior, financial stress, they emerged from your review of literature, and you are trying to show the relationship between financial literacy and financial wellness, and eventually you being able to develop a financial management program.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so let these colleagues ask, because for me that's where I was having an issue, especially you trying to determine whether these things, whether financial literacy actually has got a relationship with wellness, and me it can't. This is 0 - 1 in grade 1.
Can I come in there?
Yeah, please, let's help here.
Okay, I find this very interesting study, quite very interesting.
Thank you.
My comments would be, so this is pursuing a qualitative approach.
Yes.
Wow. My first comment would be, we cannot dismiss anything. However, because we talk of methodological innovations, but I think you need to do more in terms of justifying this, because by just looking at this conceptual framework, it's speaking more to quantitative approach than qualitative approach.
Okay, it is the
Because-
justification that I need assistance on.
Or it's the justification that you need assistance on. Yeah,
Yes.
if I'm going to assist with justification, I think then I need I need to read more about your study. If I'm going to then get to a point of actually doing that, because like I said, from the onset, qualitative, it's something else. You need to find really a lot to justify why is this study qualitative? Because if you look at the relationship there on those demographics and these financial behaviors and the like, I already saw a quantitative research, a very nice one. So I cannot say I can justify this just by looking at it now. No, it needs me to read the whole of your proposal, perhaps, and then from there, then I can be able to try and make a judgment to say, if we're going to make it qualitative, which angle do we use? I'm not ruling anything out, but then we need to look at evidence to support that this actually, we can make it a qualitative. It has been done this way, it has been done this way, and it can come out to be that way. I think that's what I can say at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Mare, do you have comments, or you might also want to have time to think about this and maybe give other comments?
Yeah, I would say that for me, when I looked at it, I thought it was pretty much straightforward, a quantitative study, not really a qualitative. So, but if she still insists that it should be a qualitative, then obviously we need to read the whole paper or the whole proposal so that we understand where she's coming from. Otherwise, as it is, the variables, the way how these variables are linking together obviously presupposes some kind of quantitative thrust that needs to be taken on board here.
Okay. I think I have Dr. Mare's email address. I will forward it through to you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that is what I felt initially when I saw it, and I was wondering. I don't have problems with the methodology being improved and all those kind of stuff, because the PhD is also going to be given to you based on your methodological contribution. But make me convinced that this can work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you
Joseph,
so much.
Joseph, your hand is up. So come through, Joseph. You may unshare your screen, Evelyn.
Okay, thank you, sir. I just wanted to contribute to say to Evelyn, how about a mixed method approach? Will that not be more convenient? Because the angle that she's going from is very good. Looking at financial literacy and financial wellness from a social point of view, that's a bit quantitative in a way that is the way people perceive money. That makes them manage it well or not manage it good. But you need numbers to support your theory. It's like Rich Dad Poor Dad. He couldn't have written his book or come up with his theory without actually looking at the actual finance which was happening in the. But I think maybe a mixed method approach would be good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that. So I think it's also a good comment, but maybe she can still try to provide justification. But if the justification is not available, I think what Joseph has suggested could be the easier way out, where you might need to first do maybe even either the sequential ones, either exploratory sequential or explanatory sequential. But let's see how, when others have reviewed it, and when you get comments, perhaps it is going to be much easier. But I am still the less convinced of the three in terms of how it is sounding and all that. Maybe as a way of trying to wrap up this, I never knew that I would have so many questions. Joseph is asking, my question is coming up with a sustainable and applicable research topic. I understand we need to identify problems or gray areas in our surrounding. Nevertheless, the challenge of scholars coming up with topics which are irrelevant and very difficult to obtain valid data cannot be overstated. Hence my question on what is the best way to formulate a research topic. What is the best way to formulate a research topic? I'm actually, me, I don't actually write want to write about things that are in the heat at the moment. I prefer those old things and write about them. But let me hear from others. What is the best way to formulate a research topic? What is the best way to formulate a research topic?
I would say that there's no one best formula to do that, but it depends on your passion. For me, it should always be anchored in your passion, your research interest. What is it that you're comfortable? Because remember, if it's a PhD study, it's something that you're going to do for the next 3-4 years. So it means you must have interest in it for a long, or otherwise, if you don't, chances are that you can easily drop out of that program. So it's something that you're really passionate about, something that you really want to know about. And if you find that area, it's very easy then to say, what are the possible, researchable issues that are emerging from that particular issue. Unlike Dr. Woyo, I tend to, now I used to be somebody who was interested in something that was happening, that had happened before, or tried to dig deep and all that. But now I've realized that in terms of beating the citation game, because it's also the citation game that is also in fashion nowadays, you need to be always at the cutting edge of research, so that you can also, because if you are researching about topical issues, it's likely that you're going to be cited more, because obviously people want to build on what you have written before they can move on to the next thing. So obviously it gives you a better chance in terms of the citation index. So there's so many new issues. For example, we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. Of course, some are talking about the COVID-19 now. There are so many new things that are happening, but it's about how do you make it relevant to your own field? How do you make it researchable to your own field? How do you make it something very exciting and worthwhile in terms of pursuing, so that it can not only, because remember, if it's at PhD or master's level, these studies that you do can actually open floodgates for you for consultants projects, but also a floodgate for you to actually access certain high demanding jobs in very lucrative companies. So it's up to you in terms of what exactly are you comfortable with. So for me, I always want to do something that I'm passionate about. If I don't have a passion in it, no matter how you try and push it to me, usually I don't take it up quite easily. That's what I would say.
Dr. Mnangatire,
I don't think I need to add anything on that part.
So choosing a topic is like choosing a wife, especially for a PhD, or choosing a husband. You really need to choose something that you're gonna stay with. You will be surprised that the journey that is supposed to be a 2-year journey, it's gonna be a 7-year journey. So you really need to choose something that you're gonna stick with, and your interests are actually very fixed in that particular area. So even as you are driving, there are always things that fascinates you about as you drive. Those are the kind of issues that should inform your choice of a topic, because interest should be at the forefront. And when you are choosing something that you are just choosing for the sake of it, you're gonna be stuck with it, and then you will find yourself quitting the PhD, quitting the research, because you cannot sustain the interest beyond 2 years. You cannot sustain the interest beyond 5 years, and all those kind of stuff. So it's quite important that when you choose a topic, please choose something that you can sustain for quite a long period of time, and also try to choose things that are topical and to make excite. But I think for me, it's about exciting you and all those kind of stuff. Finally, Precious here is saying, is it possible halfway through the PhD journey to completely change and stick to a qualitative research? I have had to remove quantitative research like GIS mapping as it's not financially feasible to do so. So Dr. Mari has already said, yes, nothing is cast in stone. A proposal is just a proposal. I don't know whether he's responding to that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'm responding to Precious. I'm just saying that in as much as you have proposed that you want to do A, B, C, D, just for example, now you are inside, when you start doing your field work, you find out that certain methods that you have said that you wanted to use, you realize that you can't even use them. Obviously, you are not duty bound to remain loyal to these methods or methodologies just because you want to use them. It's about whether they are going to help you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So if they are no longer, some proposal that you've made no longer, makes sense. For example, now all of a sudden we realize that, we can't do our normal data collection. So obviously, probably you need to innovate in terms of the instrument that we are going to use. Obviously, you have to change, but you have to justify. The issues about justifying in your methodology. Why is it, or even to report about it, to say, initially this study wanted to do A, B, C, D. But later on, I found out that actually a qualitative instrument or a qualitative methodology was actually more appropriate because it allowed me to do A, B, C, D. I think it's about justification at the end of the day. It's not just about casting it away and then move on without justifying it.
Right. Dr. Mnagatire, you can come in here as well and see.
Okay. I think that one is very good. I personally encourage it because we don't want things to remain cast in stone. If you are changing something during the course of the journey, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did not do due diligence in the beginning. It can actually be an indication that you are learning as you are going. And if I'm going to read such kind of things where a student at some point you have to change what they initially planned to do and justify that, you are likely to get more favorable comments from me.
Yeah, so I'm sure Precious has got the response. No cast in stone. You are actually flexible to do that, but for me, it's as long as the golden thread is maintained, and for me, it's as long as the thing about the PhD is maintained. So it's important to have that in mind. I don't know if I think I have covered everything that was asked here and so forth, unless if there is one with the one burning issue. Otherwise, we need to close off this meeting. Any other issue? Nothing. I think there's nothing here. So I don't know, any words, Dr. Mnagatire, Dr. Mare, in that order, and we close off the meeting.
Personally, I just want to thank everyone, the co-hosts, Dr. Mari, Dr. Woyo, and more importantly, I would like to thank to the participants for those questions that you ask us. I think it's quite a learning curve for me as much as it is for you. It is very good that you bring up these questions. I personally believe that people learn by questioning what they are doing and asking relevant and practical questions. As a lecturer, when my students do not ask questions, I actually know that there isn't much learning that is taking place, and I always try to find something that will make them start to question. Then I know now that some learning has started taking place. Thank you so much.
You are welcome, Dr. Mare.
Thanks, thanks, Dr. Woyo. I think I just want to thank everyone for joining us once again for another, another session. Also, thank you to Dr. Mnagatire for always being there for us to give us his also insightful remarks in terms of some of these burning issues around research. I just wanted to say that as we finish this session, I think one thing that is very key is that as you do master's or PhD research, you realize that it shouldn't be a lonely journey. If you want to turn it into a lonely journey, then it becomes very cumbersome, very difficult. But if you are always finding spaces where you can actually go and expose yourself, and I would always want to say, expose yourself to the rest of the world out there, so that they see and know your thinking, so that if they want to question your thinking, they can question your thinking or guide you into the right path that you should take. Once you do that, you find that the learning journey is going to become very interesting, very, very enriching, and also very, very interesting in many respects. Otherwise, have a great weekend. See you again next week with another session where we will be discussing things that relates to research in general.
So thank you. Maybe at some point, of course, we're going to do that, and we might not be able to broadcast it. I got some few students who really think that they might want to just come and share their ideas around the research that they are doing, and then they get feedback. So I think if we are to do that, then it might only be just on Zoom, and I will not put it on YouTube for that. So it's one of the things that we are likely to do. It's a mini defense before people go and defend their work to their universities and all that kind of stuff. So thank you everyone for joining. Until we meet again next week. We are no longer in lockdown, so please, you can just move wherever you want to go. You can go to Europe and come back as long as you have got a certificate. This travel is now becoming very sanitized. So enjoy your tourism, enjoy your vacation, enjoy your writing. Yeah, you need to write and travel at the same time, otherwise it becomes bad writing. So it's goodbye for now until we meet again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, and thank you very much.
Bye.